Hello, hello. It's Tuesday at noon. Excited to see you guys. Um, Here, Brilliantly HQ. It's a really grim, gray day. I'm looking forward to this chat with Heidi. We were supposed to have it last month, and she's here already. So on time. All right, let's see. I think it's going to work. Hi, Sarah. Um, there you are. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. I was just gonna say that it we were supposed to talk like a month ago, and it was the first week that I had the weirdest Instagram issue. Like I would go to go live and it wouldn't even be an option. And what I learned was that I had to completely delete the app, reinstall it, and then like log it was just such a nightmare. It's happened every single week. At
Oh,
some point during the week, the feature is gone. So I checked this morning and I should have reached out to you, but here we are. We did it.
yay, it's a miracle. I was trying to do it on my computer, which apparently doesn't work. And my children were like, Mom, you have to use your phone. I'm like, oh no. Okay, I'll run and see if I can find headphones somewhere.
Yeah, what's so funny? I just interviewed, hopefully, our new intern, and she's
Yay.
like 18. And I'm like, you guys just know how to do all the things that I
Yeah,
don't know how to do.
yeah.
Like,
And there's no level of panic. They're like, oh no, you just have to use this or do this.
and how would you know? Because it makes, to me, I'd rather be looking at the computer than trying to like balance my phone somewhere.
Yep, exactly. Me too. But
But
it's very easy for them off the cuff. They're literally coaching me while watching Captain America, like doing two things at once.
nice. Remind me, how old are your kids?
I have two in high school, one who just started college, and one who just got her master's degree in child psychology.
Oh my God, amazing.
Yeah, they're stupendous people. I love being around them, except when they're snotty about technology. And
Yeah,
not so much.
well, it happens. I'm just entering into that. Mine are 10 and 12, and my 12-year-old will say things to me in a tone where it's like, come on, mom. I'm like, oh, I'm about to reach like peak stupidity. I don't know if this happened for you where like, when they're little, you know everything, and you're like,
Oh yeah.
and then you just know nothing.
Yep.
Maybe you're probably transitioning back into knowing things, right?
A little bit, yeah. But mine, like for my son, that was kindergarten, and we had that conversation. Like I can no longer help you with your homework, buddy. I'll cheer you on. Like world history, I'm totally there, and language arts, literature, I'm there. But math is all dead all the time.
Oh yeah, totally. Here too. I know I did not art history. I I haven't taken math in more than half of my life. It's all
Right.
gone. Yeah,
Yep. I
totally.
use it for the basics, but I think that's why God made Excel spreadsheets, right? So we don't. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Thank goodness for Excel. Well, I'm so excited to have you here. Before we dive in, do you want to do just like a quick little intro about who you are? We've talked about you a few times. Hi, Alfonso. On Brilliantly, and we've shared an interview with you, but if you want to do just a quick intro, that'd be great.
Sure. So I'm a two-time breast cancer survivor. Well, current patient. I'm someone who's in that odd category. I'm not thank heavens, I'm not stage 4, but I'm also not someone who could say that my cancer is gone. My breast cancer was first diagnosed when I was pregnant with my son. And we were kind of given some pretty harsh news. At that time, there weren't really a whole lot of people who would have said, yes, you can continue your pregnancy and fight this cancer. It was kind of an either or. And I chose staying with the or and the baby, and actually was able to find a brilliant oncologist who treated me and became my friend as well. So he's actually over at Stanford now. He heads
Oh, wow.
their breast cancer program. So he saved both of our lives. And then when my cancer reoccurred, it had gone to the cellular level on my chest wall. So I have some fantastic little tattoo dots from radiation, and they know where everything is. And so I just take a little low dose chemo aromatase inhibitor every day, and that's kind of my everyday. But I get to have an everyday, so that's how I
Yeah.
look. That's how I look at things.
Yeah, that's amazing. When we first did our interview, it's such a harrowing story. There's been such a huge amount of research and development that's happened in the breast cancer space since the time that you got diagnosed,
Yep.
because it really was a choice of like save your life or the baby's life
Yep.
at that time. And, I would love for you to share a little bit about how you advocated for yourself in that situation, because it's so hard. It's so hard to have somebody tell you it's binary, like it's black and white, these are your choices, and you were like, no, I'm going to find another.
Yeah. And then there's this other option over here, which no one's mentioned. Yeah. Sure. I'd love to, because I think it's important also to note that I come from a long line of cancer patients, none of whom are with me anymore. So my mom passed away when she was 42 from breast cancer. And much like most of America, my mom was an immigrant into this country. And so one of the things about that particular community is that you don't question, there are certain things you don't question. Doctors are one of them.
Right.
If a doctor tells you this is what it is, that's what you're going to do out of respect, out of, acknowledging their wisdom. There was no advocating for my mom in her mind, like her doctor, that was the doctor's responsibility. And I watched her, in agony for years until she passed away. And I remember thinking at the time, gosh, why didn't you try to, we were right outside of Chicago. Why didn't you try there? I don't know, 50 hospitals within driving distance. Why didn't we go to see any of those? But she considered it to be an insult to her doctor to get a second opinion. And having spoken to many people who are first generation, they said that that's not currently in 2021, that is still a situation you don't question. So I kind of learned what the possibilities were by seeing someone who considered there to be no possibilities. Right. And so for myself, it was a no-brainer. Like I love my children. I had had 3 successful pregnancies, 2 miscarriages, and I did not want to lose this baby trying to save my life, when I knew that I could have a year, I could have 5 years. Why should I have to make that choice when I already kind of made the choice? But I was told you can wait to have your chemotherapy, but we don't know if you'll live. My cancer is aggressive. We don't know if you'll be alive. And so I just kind of had that point of anger where I thought, why don't I matter? Why shouldn't he or she matter? Like, why can't we do this together? And is there somebody out there smarter than me that can figure this out?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting when I finally connected with Dr. George Sledge, was his name, my doctor. He had I think that year, 24 pregnant patients, 24, when no one else was even talking about it. But he was at that time, he was in Indianapolis. And so people had to come from all over the country to middle of nowhere, Indiana, to get their treatment. Wow. Because he was the only one that offered hope. And shortly after he had treated me, gosh, I think I had just started my radiation. Shortly after we had gone through the main chemo, he was appointed head of ASCO, the American Society of Clinical Oncologists. He was appointed to be the head. And his first speech as president, he said, listen, we need to talk about treating pregnant women, that it's possible. And it was on CNN and, AP News. It was like this big news flash. Meanwhile, this guy had been silently, courageously plowing through, working on this for decades. So some people knew.
It's so awesome. I was thinking while you were talking that even just miscarriages and how they were framed forever until like the last few years,
yes,
were so minimized, and the experience of the woman, and of course of the husband too, but you go through all of the same hormonal things when you lose a baby, as if you had a baby, and it doesn't ever go away, and you never stop mourning that loss. And I think it probably was difficult for physicians to even understand, because we weren't allowed to talk about it. Like, of course, we're just going to terminate your pregnancy and treat your breast cancer, because we weren't allowed to say.
There was a disconnect. Right, exactly.
How terrible it is.
Yeah.
It's just so awesome that he was a pioneer in that, because
yes,
you
absolutely.
hear about it so often, and every time I see a pregnant woman who gets diagnosed, I think of you, and like that there's hope, and look at how well you're doing and how wonderful your children are, and you're such a great example of hope.
Well, I think he is actually my doctor is, because he's the one that was like, he never pretended with me. He didn't say, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake, this will be easy. As a matter of fact, he was like, this will probably be one of the hardest things you ever go through, but you want to take this path. I think based on what kind of speaking to what you just mentioned, when it comes to something like miscarriage, even breast cancer, there seems to have been this cloak of shame on things that happen to women medically.
Right.
And that needs to stop. Like, I don't want my daughters, no, it's not that I don't want, I will not have my daughters say, oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed, I don't want to talk about it. That shame needs to die with me. I just put this out on LinkedIn, actually. We were doing something in the kitchen. This commercial came up the other day, and it was a woman. It was a commercial for a Dove body wash, and I never pay attention to any commercials. But I just got a glimpse of a woman with a full mastectomy. She had gotten in the shower, full mastectomy, looking at herself in the mirror and smiling. And I'm like, trying not to cry while I'm like chopping the carrots, I'm like, oh my God, like this was so powerful because I don't know, 195 years old right now. Right. So, but before that, like there's no images, there's nothing out there that talks about this. No one is like, there's this cloak of shame that comes with things like miscarriages and breast cancer. We didn't ask for either of those. It is not our fault. We should not be ashamed. What we need to do is rally around one another and say, you're not by yourself. Chrissy Teigen, that lovely young lady, wrote this beautiful piece and like kind of poured her heart out. It shouldn't have taken, she shouldn't have had to be alone through that. She shouldn't have had to say, gosh, there's nobody out here. No, honey, they're your mom, your grandma, generations from the beginning of time have had this. We should apologize to that generation and say, I'm sorry. You're not alone. And it's not your fault.
No, it's not your fault. I think that was a huge part of it, right? Like we weren't educated to understand what was happening with our bodies and what was normal. Yeah. And I think we're just now at the moment where there's a tide change, and it's like education is available. The internet gives us access to information in a new way. We can find each other. We can talk about what's happening because we didn't know. And, I think there's like, what did I do? Right? Like, what did I do to deserve this? Or why is this my fault? And how could I change what happened? There's all these things where you blame yourself.
Yes.
And I think that is, a feminine burden for the most part.
Oh, for sure.
It's because of culture, but I do really believe that we're at this moment where your daughter and my daughter won't have to live that way, that they're going to be able to say, I feel this way, this thing happened to me, and someone will be there to listen and not say, that's not real.
Yep.
A huge part of what we're trying to do with Brilliantly is validate these like long-term quality of life things that women face, that when they talk to their doctor's like, that's not a thing. And you're like, but it is. I'm living with it every day.
Yeah. The mental health care has to be kind of combined with regular healthcare, and body positivity, this wonderful new kind of thing sweeping the planet, needs to scoop along and include healthcare as well. Like if we're going to focus on body positivity, we need to include people who have had amputations, surgeries. Like it has to be all of us. Right. Anybody with a scar needs to be considered to be part of the body positivity movement, I think, personally.
Yeah, I think so too. And it is, I don't know if you did this when you were pregnant. I did it more the first time that I was pregnant than the second, but I wanted to see pictures of pregnant women. I wanted to see what their bellies looked like. I wanted to see what their butts looked like. I wanted to know like how they were changing and how they looked after. And with my mastectomy, it was in 2013. I couldn't find that.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't also, like on social media, they weren't allowed, right?
Right.
Those photos.
And it really hasn't been that long since I had mine, and it's changed so much that you can find women everywhere. And you could like go meet a woman at Starbucks who's going to be like, yeah, look, I look okay. Like you're going to be okay. I feel okay. That knowing that you're not alone is so massively important.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I have a friend named Wida, and she's in Florida, and she's the first one I ever met. She sent me a picture of herself. I forget what she was doing, but there was a little bit of an image of a tattoo kind of somewhere that was unexpected. And I said, do you have a tattoo? And she's like, oh. And she showed me, and her mastectomy scar is a tattoo. And I was like, that is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. She's like, why should I like this? I'm beautiful. Why should I not show it? I'm like, you're my hero. Yeah. Because it's so bold and it's so beautiful. And it's taking something that would normally have been normally is shameful. I mean, the number of women that I talk to and men who, when they get out of the shower, don't want to look in the mirror, and it's part of what I literally just put up on my Instagram post is, my LinkedIn post is like, we don't want to look in the mirror. We want to look away. We don't. But the commercial I was talking about was right there in front of us. And she wasn't ashamed. She was just looking at the mirror, looking at herself like, look at me. Aren't I cool? I'm like, yes, you are.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And, I think one of the other things about you that I think is so inspiring is how you have just dove in to being an advocate.
Yep.
And doing public speaking. And that's one of the things that we spoke about when I first chatted with you was like that might not naturally be what you thought you were going to do or what you wanted to do.
No.
I would love
Oh
to
my
hear a
gosh.
little bit about your advocacy work.
Well, my doctor is the one who actually encouraged me to do it, and by encouraging, he said you have to. And so it's kind of like if somebody saves your life, you're like, well, whatever, okay. I didn't. The first time he'd asked me to speak, I had just finished chemo, just had the baby, like within a week of one another. Finished chemo, had
Wow.
baby, hadn't started radiation yet, so I didn't have any hair. I still had my you just had your fourth baby body. Oh my gosh. I did computer work. I'm like, I am the one that sits like in the server room. I'm not the girl for you. And he's like, your story is one of hope, and not just your hope, but like my son's name is Noah. Noah's hope, my hope that people will continue to give to research. I'm like, okay. I mean, if it'll help you, help someone else. And then what he said was, if you speak to a crowd of 12 people or 1,200 people or 12,000 people, what if there's one person who needs to hear that? One. It could be someone who's just been diagnosed like you. It could be someone's mom. It could be, someone's husband. What if you're that one person they need to hear? He said, you can't. He said, if you need to hide and tuck yourself away, you can. He said, but I think you have a bigger purpose. So I reluctantly went into it, and I don't have like a marketing agent or anything like that. I just speak where people ask me to. And that's led down really interesting paths, not just speaking, but I'm on the Department of Defense Grants Review Board. So the United States Department of Defense funds breast cancer research to a staggering, spectacular degree. And it is beautiful work, and nobody ever talks about it. It's like this wonderful secret that we have. But the Department of Defense includes cancer patients on the panels. So we can review these grants that come in and say, this is hopeful, this is fantastic, or this might hurt more than you guys think. That kind of path really fascinates me, because I learn about what's on the horizon. I see work that's being done in the research space, in the clinical trial space. And so when I do go speak the next time, I'm able to say eloquently, I know that there's hope on the horizon for triple negative, because I just reviewed 15 applications in this incredibly new novel idea. So it's kind of gone a path I would have never expected, but I think it's important. And I do have one story. It's interesting. When my doctor said there's always going to be one person who needs to hear you. And I kind of forgot about it. And then one time I was asked to go speak to a group of surgeons, all men, which is very difficult, because usually, for a breast cancer event, there's at least one woman in there.
Right.
And I did my whole thing, poured my heart out, and I got like a golf clap at the end. It was like, oh my God, I failed. So I went back, I came home, my husband's like, you can't bat 1,000 all the time. You're not what did you want to stand an ovation every time? I'm like, well, yeah, I think I'm supposed to. And he's like, walk it off. You're fine. But I thought, that I had really ruined it. And I got a call 2 months later from a woman who said, I heard you speak at this event. My daughter's been diagnosed, and they told her she has to terminate her pregnancy. Would you be willing to talk to her? And I'm like, oh my gosh, absolutely. Where did you hear me speak? And she said, I was at this event. And so instead of like comforting this mom, I'm like, oh no, I remember that event. There were no women there, and I did a really bad job. And she's like, no. I know there were all men there. She said, but I was the waitress. And when you started speaking, I held the coffee pot and I hid behind a pillar. For your whole speech, I hid and listened to you. And I didn't know why, but I was just supposed to be there. And so by the time she's done talking, I'm weeping, And so I talked to her daughter, and I'm like, here's who you need to talk to. You need to get in touch with this doctor, and you need to advocate for yourself. And she had a beautiful, wonderful little baby, and she's fine. But it is that one person. Like, if you only help one person, then it's worth all of it. So that's kind of why I went down that path.
That's why so many people do what they do in this space, right? Like, if you can take a terrible thing that happened to you and help one other person understand it, feel less isolated, find the doctor that they need, it makes it feel like you didn't go through it in vain. Yep.
And hopefully promulgate more discussion and funding so that my daughters never have to be interviewed about breast cancer. You know what I mean? Like, there's a deliberate push to this, and it's selfish on my part, but I want my daughters to live to be really old ladies making cookies. That's what I want. I want them to be strong and healthy. And I also want to be I want to make sure that it's not just people that look like us. You know what I mean? I'm very deliberate about making sure that people are included, because there are so many disparate groups out there. You know, I was just talking about triple negative breast cancer, the number of women who are minority populations who are diagnosed at such a staggering rate. Like, they need to be included in everything, every discussion, every grant, everything needs to be surrounding these women to kind of help them, because it's frustrating and maddening that we're not there yet.
Yeah, you know, somebody put in the comments while you were chatting that representation matters when you were talking about the Dove commercial. And I think every part of what that means is true, whether it's scars, amputations, breasts, race, age, all of it, because it's so easy for us to see a certain kind of person represented and think that's not for me.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And when we have, and if we have, everyone else has too. You know, we can't, I know just being a woman who is diagnosed, you know, under the age of 40 and pregnant, sitting in the room getting chemo, I was by decades the youngest person. And I remember thinking, is there no one else? Like when I had my baby, that was, you know, that was life changing, but only because I didn't think that I'd be there, you know. But but the women in the waiting room with me were talking about, I want to make sure that I see my great grandchild be born. I'm like, great grandchild? I just want my actual child, you know. So representation, you know, showing that cancer looks like everybody. Yeah, that's crucial, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, I really appreciate the time, and I love seeing all the work you do. I follow you on LinkedIn too. I think you're a little bit more active on LinkedIn than you are on Instagram. So
I'm working on it. I'm hesitant to put pictures out because first of all, I'm not allowed to put pictures of my children without explicit permission in signed documentation form. Just kidding. So like, other than the dog and like myself, and I hate putting pictures up of myself, so I try to take pictures of cool places, but you know, we're on lockdown, so.
Yeah, well, you know, I was just going to say that I'm going to encourage people who are watching this to follow you on LinkedIn, because you put out a lot of helpful information, a lot of hopeful information. I think it's great to know what research is happening. You know, I often see your LinkedIn posts and think like, cool. And you know, there's a lot on Instagram, I think, that's just pretty pictures. And I think you're so good at sharing actual content that's helpful and actionable. So for people who are watching now or later, we're going to direct you to Heidi's LinkedIn. But I will, of course, tag you in this. And I'm looking so forward to staying in touch and seeing what you do. And thank you for being a beacon of hope.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for connecting with me, and we'll do it again. And I promise I'll make it my driving ambition to get more active on Instagram. I promise.
Well, or not. Or we could do a LinkedIn Live. I think that's a thing now.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Yeah, we'll have to try that next time.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Thank you, my dear.
Yeah, have a great day, Heidi. Take good care.
You too. Bye-bye.